Good evening and welcome to night 6 of Premier League Fallout Bar. And tonight you have no Dob, as Dob is in the venue at Nottingham enjoying the action. So for 1 week I am taking over as a temporary host, but I am joined by regular on the Fallout Bar, Cam. First of all, Cam, how are you doing?
Not too bad at all, mate. Good evening. Good to see you back on our screens. It's been a little while since I've spent any time on here with you, so should be fun. Nice not to have to look at Gob's face for once.
I'm sure he'll be in at some point. And like I says, I know he's in Nottingham enjoying the night. I believe on the back of his win on the fancy, which he's told us about plenty of times, but he's been there enjoying it tonight. Just before we go into what I'm going to say is a bit of a indifferent Premier League night from some we saw. Before we go into the action, just say hello to a few people who are in the chat room. Nicola, and Andrew. Trade has finished off my start, which was glory. You know the rest. And Trade Jordan has finished that off for me. Rose, Curtis, Matthew, a few of the regulars are in tonight. And Cam, let's just go straight into tonight's action. But before we talk about the play itself, we had an announcement a couple of days ago of two players who was injury stairs going into this weekend. Not talking about performances, all that aside, was you surprised to see both of those playing? Because on Monday night on the Live Lounge, we expected one, but not both of which to play.
Yeah, I think we all kind of felt that we were possibly not going to see one of them and maybe two of them. But yeah, we did see both of them up there tonight, and I'd say it didn't look to hamper them too much, but possibly there was a little fall off as we went along from Gezi. Whether that was hand related or whether I'm assuming it was, because it was quite a dramatic fall off from where he started at. But then again, you never know.
Yeah, so as mentioned, we had those two sort of injury stares, but unlike last week, we had all 8 players play and fighting out for the £10,000 in Nottingham. And so that proceedings underway, it was Michael Smith versus James Wade. And Michael Smith, who's had a very, very indifferent couple of weeks. We saw, obviously, a run to the TV ranking final, but disappointment once more. We've seen a run to a Premier League final. And then tonight, what a way to start and what a game to start against James Wade.
Yeah, it was not probably what we usually expect, especially from James Wade, in that he was firing in 180s for fun, which is not really what we expect from James Wade. And he went 11% on the doubles, which again is not what we expect from James Wade whatsoever. It was a little bit almost roles reversed slightly, and it was a fantastic match to start us off. Both of them averaging well over 100. The scores were flying in, and we had Michael Smith just kind of was the clinical one on the outer ring, and that's what made it look a very, very comfortable 6-1 victory, which it probably wasn't quite as easy as that looks.
Yeah, it's one that you look at. You go even deeper into the sort of the stats of the game. It was, like I say, it's a high quality game. The doubles obviously down the way of Michael Smith being over 50% and Wade back around that 11% mark. But even looking at it, if you break it down to the hundreds, the 140s, the 180s, obviously 180s, you would always expect Michael Smith to beat probably most of the field and then James Wade. But then you spin it round, you'd probably expect James Wade to be your ton 140, one of the best in the world at consistently hitting those. And Michael Smith's beating on all of them. As I said at the start of the show, it's a very indifferent night, and we'll come on to different games to why it is. But it certainly started off that way in regards to no sort of stat went the way it did, and probably even prediction of the scoreline. Some would have swayed with Smith, some Wade, but I don't think many would have predicted it to be over in 7 heads.
No, and it's not often that James Wade gets kind of dismantled in a game, even if he's not at his best. He always nicks a few legs, and it's always close, and it's always a scrap. But yeah, it wasn't today, and it was big help for Smith in terms of leg difference and everything else to get this out of the way so quickly against someone that everyone's kind of struggled to put away so far.
Yeah, comment there from HJV in regards to Wade played well. Can't win with a higher average, apparently. So on this week, he was just below Michael Smith, but Michael Smith 102.92, James Wade 102.63. But just before we move on to the next game, looking at James Wade, he's come out of this week with a 6-1 defeat, but generally for the machine, performance-wise over the past few weeks, where do you think that game is? Is one of a select few players now who haven't picked up one of these nightly wins?
Yeah, well, it's getting shorter and shorter, that list as well, isn't it? Every week we seem to almost have a new winner. We've only had MVG kind of go back to back and the last 2 weeks and rattle off 2 wins. So it is getting shorter, that list of people that haven't won one. And he's playing pretty well, and he's probably kind of exceeding a little bit what I thought he may do in this tournament to start with. And he is going to need to start making some finals, though. Otherwise, people are going to get ahead of him. I mean, that was big today for both Gary and Michael, again, just in getting some more points on the board. And every week that happens and Wade he doesn't make a final or win one, then he is going to drop a little bit further back.
So then moving on to match number 2, MVG versus Derwin Price. We touched upon the injuries of Derwin Price and Peter Wright coming into tonight. And I think Michael van Derwin was hotly fancied probably this way, not just because of the injury, but the form itself. And the game sort of started in that fashion. We saw a few wayward darts from Desi. We saw MVG popping a 1-4-4 to go 3-1 up. But that was then one half of the game. And then, Tam, it took a very, very big switch. And we saw Derwin Price a lot more straighter, a lot more consistent with his scoring. And then turn it around with only MVG picking up one more lead.
Yeah, it was like probably seemed a little bit of rustiness at the start from Gezi, in that he hadn't played last week. He's probably not been able to put a lot of practice in. And he just needed a little bit rusty for the first few legs, and MVG kind of punished him. That 1-4-4 was just a bit of magic. That as soon as the first one hit the treble 20, you kind of knew it was going already. He might as well have called it at that point. But then, yeah, we saw a huge turnaround. I think at that point at 3-1, it was an average of 105 for MVG and about 90 for Gezi. And then it sort of just completely turned around. And Gezi must have averaged maybe 112, 115 for the rest of the match after that point. And just put in a performance like we know he can. And like there was no injury, there was no issue. We just played some really, really good stuff. It was another sort of high quality match. I know MVG dropped off a little bit, but still the performance was still pretty solid from him. And those last sort of how many legs it is, trying to work it out now from 3-1, 6 legs, he was just outplayed completely.
Yeah, and we've seen with COVID now handshakes, used to be before a darts time was every handshake, used to be then be the fist bump. Now we've seen the opposite hand fist bump, which for me is the first time I've seen it, and it looks very uncomfortable with Derwin Price.
So awkward because the other player goes with the natural hand of the right hand that everyone else would do, but then he's like sort of round the back. It doesn't look ideal, and obviously just to do with the injuries, obviously he's worried about it in the fact that he's not even prepared to touch hands with someone, even sort of fairly gently. So there must be some sort of serious damage there that he's still kind of coping with. But yeah, awkward at best, I think is probably the best way of describing it.
When Derwin Price and firing a 102 average and injured, I'm not sure the fist pump would be gently there, Tam. I've got a feeling the next opponent would have been coming up a bit harder on that. They've seen the level of performance. But as you said there, from Desi to come out and it being a slow start, even though MVG fired in the 1-4-4, we saw another ton plus check out from him later on in the game. But for Derwin Price to react in that way when, from a lot of people who saw the injury on Monday night, on Monday afternoon, whenever it was, he put it on his Instagram story. We was talking about it on Live Lounge, social media sort of went a bit. There was a few question marks around, is he just playing? What is the reason for him playing this week and obviously last week? But he proved a lot of people run for me tonight, and it shows that sometimes that fight, that battle, that character, because there's a bit of an inevitability when MVG, that 1-4-4 that I was one who sat that Dodwell Price picked up another lead, and that's not the standard of him. But the fight back, the passion on stage that we expect with Price anyway, but to see when he's got that injury, probably to me showed another side of Desi tonight.
Yeah, I think we could have seen him not seen him obviously because we've seen it that he didn't do that and he stuck in there. But I think other players at that point may have just kind of thrown it in a little bit and like you say, not won another leg, lost 6-1 and gone. We'll come back next week or whenever the next time is that we feel kind of comfortable with it. But I think the biggest thing is they all know that they can't afford to be missing weeks and losing out on points because it's not like the Premier League was last year or the year before and the last few years. You're not losing out on 2 points or 1 point if you don't play. You potentially losing out on 6 to people around you, and it's a big difference, and you can't afford to not be up there and trying. And which I think, regardless of how you think he got the injury, of whether you believe what he says or whether you think it's anything to do with the boxing match that he's training for, which obviously throws into question the idea of even doing that during the Premier League because of how important each week is right now. But that is the point. You cannot miss a week. You can't afford to.
Yeah, and I'm sure those conversations will come up more and more. Probably not even the training, even though we've seen the impacts and we're talking about is this. The comment was it's not to do with the boxing, I believe. However, when that does come around, when he's actually fighting, obviously I know he'll have the gloves he'll have will be protective ones, as it being an amateur bout. However, it's certainly a different impact that could have shoulder, part of a completely different parts of your body. So I'm sure that will come up more and more as the weeks progress. But that win for Derwin Price did put him a semi-final place with Michael Smith. But we will continue with the quarterfinals and we move on to Derry Anderson and Johnny Clayton, where for Derry Anderson, he just got over the line. There was an opportunity early on where if it's one of my bugbears in darts when someone's got 2 darts at tops or 2 darts at a double and the first one is out the board, because we see Jose do it multiple times. Yes, the benefits of going for the double is bigger. However, why are you going for the top end of the double? And these are professionals, so they aim for a specific part of that double a lot of times. Really, really frustrating me. But Derry Anderson, on Monday, going back to Monday and sort of talking about this and previewing this and listening to you on previous week's time, there has been a worry about Derry Anderson because the performances haven't been there with plenty of performances. But just looking at this time solely, got over the line but more importantly, he just got over the line. That's the thing. He got there where normally it's been down the other way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. He needed a result massively, and yeah, we've kind of been saying it for the last few weeks that there were concerns before the tournament of whether he actually really wanted to be part of it and whether he had that kind of the motivation to be traveling every week and going and doing it. And I think we saw tonight that he wants to be on there, especially even his interview afterwards. He was keen. He was even made a little joke about the fact that he wouldn't be going to Rotterdam next week because it's technically a Euro tour, so he wasn't going. But yeah, he's one of them though. He literally seemed well up for it, and I think tonight was a massive turning point. If he'd gone through tonight without getting a result again, then it could have been at that point where he was almost out of it already, and now he's right back in there.
Yeah, and for this one being sort of an indifferent game, a Premier League night, 2 quality players, yes, not in the form we've seen both of them perform, but for me, it had the drama, it had the last leg, it had Johnny Clayton missing a dart at ball for a 1-8 to win the game. But looking at it from a number sort of perspective, there's only 89 from Dando, 91 from Johnny Clayton, only 180 in the game, only 1 ton plus checkouts. So looking at it this part, I still wasn't convinced that we saw a Derry Anderson sort of free-flowing, comfortable, happy with how he was throwing. But we'll touch more on Derry Anderson. But for Johnny Clayton, very good start to this Premier League, winning the opening weights, getting to a final also in the opening weights. Still on 10 points. But looking over his shoulder now, Johnny Clayton, your thoughts on his performance, not just tonight, but now going into, the middle part of the Premier League?
I think, like you say, this game, it wasn't a spectacle, really, was it? It wasn't the entertaining sort of game we were hoping for. It was a little bit of a difficult watch at times, and I think that's been the case for Johnny for a few weeks now, that he's just not quite finding that form that he had previously. And it's kind of understandable. He's been at that level for the last 18 months where he's played some unbelievable stuff and been probably, if not the form player in the world, in the top couple in the world of how well he's played over the last 18 months. He was kind of due a dip, but it's come at a really bad time for him, this dip, because, like you say, he started well the first couple of weeks. He got himself into a strong position, but he is struggling now. And after tonight, there are a lot of people that are a lot closer to him now. So he had a big gap and it's fallen away, and it's got to be a concern for him. He's just got to find something. He's just got to find just a scrappy win. That's what he needs. I think the same as what Gary got tonight. He needs a scrappy win. Just get over the line, however he does it, and hopefully just kick on from there.
Yeah, totally agree. Just seen a comment in from JJ. I believe he's referring to the final. So I will come back to that comment when we are discussing the final. But moving on to the final quarter-final, and it was Joe Cullen versus Peter Wright. And it was the second player who, by Monday evening, we still hadn't had a response to say that Peter was playing PB. Sort of dropped a little bit of an exclusive on the live lounge that he expected him to be in this Thursday and to be playing all the Premier League nights, but there was no official statement, and that sort of then come out on Tuesday that Peter Wright was playing. And at the start of the night, the two players who had only been announced on Tuesday as being fit to play, the second one went on and got the win as well, Tam.
Yeah, injuries really don't matter, do they? Apparently, it doesn't matter what's wrong with you. Just they just turn up and play through them, and apparently can just still get to the levels. I mean, this was another one that was not. It wasn't really the standard that we expect again, but sometimes you have just got to tough it out and scrap out a win, and a win's a win at the end of the day. You get no points whatsoever for your average. So getting over the line and getting that result is all you've got to do. And yeah, I think the injury for Wright, I mean, he didn't look in any trouble up there. It didn't look like it was particularly bothering him. I mean, I suppose we didn't see him have to pick a dart up off the floor at any point or anything like that. So that may have shown a little bit more if something like that happened. Yeah. But yeah, he didn't. It didn't seem to affect him really, and I think that'll be probably good for him. I assume he's going to have to give it quite a bit of rest, and it is a bit tough with the back that there's not a huge amount you can kind of do to fix it so much, and it's about resting up and just not overdoing it. But he's not a player that kind of massively leans over like sort of MBG does. So you'd hope that won't give him too much trouble as well, and he can still put in sort of enough practice to still perform at the level we kind of expect from him.
Yeah, and we'll probably touch more upon, we definitely will touch more on Peter Wright when we get to the semi-finals as well. But looking at Joe Cullen, a lot of talk about there being a bit of a split in the Premier League, and we saw wins that have probably not separated the Premier League as much as it was before tonight's action. But for Joe Cullen now, who's at the bottom of the Premier League table, to then have a defeat, and for me, was showing frustrations on the stage very, very early on in this game. You know, looking probably in the second, third leg, couple of intervals. JJ's mentioned it there that he performed well with just the checkouts. But for me, he performed okay early on, and it was the checkouts early on. But then that frustration was getting to him throughout that leg and not just at the start. So for me, very worried for Joe in the sense of for the Premier League, because it seems to be now getting a bit more on top of him. That sort of adrenaline of being in there seems to have disappeared a little bit. The enjoyment from the waterline is there, but as soon as he's on that dartboard, doesn't seem to me as like he's got that sort of just going up there and throwing them as he used to have with that attitude, Tam.
Yeah, there's no freedom there at all, is there? He's not relaxed. He's not, even when he finds a big score, whether he fires in a 180 or hits a big jack out, like you thought that 100 he took out might be the turning point and give him a chance to kind of kick on, but it's just not quite there for him, and it's just not. I don't know what it is, whether it is just the occasion, the first time of being in the Premier League and dealing with the pressure of that. Because if he plays someone averaging 87, we would expect Joe Cullen to beat someone averaging 87 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100. Like, he is that good, and we've seen him put in monumental scores and averages and performances where he's absolutely unplayable at times, and he just doesn't seem to have that right now. And I don't know how he gets out of it at the moment, because, like you say, there was a lot of looking to the sky, shouting after he'd thrown things. It's completely in his head right now, and that is the biggest thing. And it might just be another one where he needs a scrappy win, like just to nick one, like 6-5, just with like an 18 dart leg to win it. Not even a good leg to win it, but just get over the line. Whether it's in double one or wherever it might be, just something where he can then just play with a little bit more freedom, because he's got 2 points on the board. It's not a complete sort of waste of a week. And then that second game is a bit then of a freebie, and he can go out there and relax, and probably we'll see a little upturn in the same way that we did today.
Yeah, no, I do honestly think that weekends like this weekend, and we've got a few of them coming up, these Pro Tours where there's no pressure on him. We saw what a fantastic start he had on the Pro Tour this year, and I do think then away from the stage on these weekends will be a bit of a relief to Joe, and we should see him have a couple of good runs this weekend. I'm not going to predict him going on to win one of them, because trying to predict a 1-8 field it's hard enough for me to pick when there's just 2 left. You know this, so trying to pick a 1-8 field. However, what I can see is him relaxing a bit more and potentially seeing a different side to Joe next week. Once he's got a few wins under his belt, as we know how relentless this Premier League can be in whatever format as the players you've got. But moving then on to quarter-final number 1, and we had Bully Boy versus Derwin Price, and this result ended 6-4 to Michael Smith. However, the story of this game was certainly a game of 2 halves, if there ever was one. Derwin Price was 4-0 in front at full 1, then had a handful, if not more, darts at a double, which Michael Smith then punished. But at 4-0, Derwin Price looks likely to make it to a final before Michael Smith reels off 6 straight legs while only averaging 89 cam.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It wasn't that Smith really turned it up and started scoring at a high level. Yeah, he probably upped it 4 or 5 points from where he was at that point. But he didn't suddenly put 20 points on his average and start firing in a load of maxes and big finishes. It was just, we did see a big fall off from Gezi after that point of 4 legs, and that's why I don't know whether it is that he's not been able to practice all week and it was fatigue more than actually the injury, or whether it was starting to give him some pain at that point or making it difficult for him. But yeah, from 4-0 up, he looked like he was cruising and he was going to fly through another game in the same way he did in the second half of the game against MVG. But as soon as he did start to fall off, Smith just found a little bit of probably consistency at that point was more than anything. He wasn't setting the world alight, but he was just consistently hitting scores and putting Gezi under pressure. And yeah, like we said, we saw a lot of missed doubles. Like, I don't think he got a shot at a double in the last 4 legs, possibly, because just looking at the doubling stats, I didn't notice this at the time, but he was 4 of 20 in the 6th leg, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the end, he didn't even get a shot at double, and that was sort of showed how well Smith kind of closed it out. But yeah, to miss 16 darts at double in 6 legs and still be 4-2 up was pretty good going, to be fair, from Gezi at that time. But then yeah, impressive from Smith the way he closed it out, and it did raise a few questions though about whether it was the injury, whether it was the lack of practice. I don't know what it might have been, but whether it was a bit of fatigue or just for some reason it just went off, which can happen as well. Yeah,
you alluded to it there. We didn't have another dart in the last 4 legs. The one thing they did have at 4 apiece is, a 4-3 was up at the time, is he was sat on 64, and it was when Michael Smith then fired in that 106.
Yes.
He didn't have a dart then, but he had a setup at 64 then. And for me, as much as the turning point seemed to be at that full 1, it hit him then. So he felt like he could potentially be done back. And not
Yeah,
saying you expected to come back at 106, but probably more than half you will be coming back.
yeah, definitely.
And the fact that he didn't then come back just seemed to have that last sort of, I don't want to use a boxing term, but sort of have a bit of a bit of a blow into Desi that sort of took it all out of him then. And we saw from Michael Smith what we've seen a lot from him consistently, and then into another final on a TV night, whether it would be a tournament or a Premier League night, but another good win for Michael Smith to wrap it up. And then his opponent in the final was his former mentor, Darry Anderson, who got the better of Peter Wright 6-3. So both of the players that come into this week with a bit of an injury got to the semi-finals, but then both run out of a bit of steam in the semi-finals. Would you say that's about right, Tam?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think less so with Peter Wright that he ran out of steam than what we saw with Gezi. There wasn't the same sort of drop off. I think it was a very good performance from Gary Anderson, who, after scrapping his way through against Johnny Clayton in not a very good performance, like I say, it was that little bit of, is this a bit of a freebie now? Because I've got 2 points on the board, which I've not done for however many weeks in a row now. I've got a bit of a free shot here to just have a run and relax a little bit. And he just looked a little bit just smoother and a little bit more like the Gary that we all love and all want to see every week. Because when he is in that form, it's magic to watch. And it's just every time that first dart goes in, you think this is a 180 or this checkout's going. And he looked a bit more like that. I think the 4 180s in there. He ended up averaging nearly 102 as well. And was clinical on the outer ring as well, which is not something that we always see from him either.
Yeah, just before come on to that sort of doubling of Darry Anderson, it was 7 straight holds in the game before Wright missed doubles, and then Darry Anderson sort of slipped off, which is where I was alluding to in the regards to the dip of Peter Wright. I don't think it come on throughout the whole day, just the back end of that, but the quality then we saw from Darry Anderson, and as you mentioned, sits out to 9 on the checkouts. And for me, with Darry Anderson, when he's at his best, and I'm not saying he's been there tonight, but when he's at his best, when he's won world championships, it's when he's been checking out these checkouts between 61 and 98, that sort of 2 dart checkout, and he's just been so clinical on it. And we saw it in this game, his highest checkout was 72, but there was a lot of those sort of just 2 darts out, 3 darts out, not allowing Peter Wright that opportunity. And in some of these, he was well in front with Storing, but that's when Darry Anderson can get to that sort of level of pinging those out, where that confidence comes from, because you know his 180 is always going to be there.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? I think you see that first dart, and if it goes in the middle of the treble 20, you just think the double's going here as well. And it's that, and I think he feels that way as well. I think probably when he hits that first one and he knows he's then got 2 in his hand at a double, he's just so relaxed and so smooth in the way he throws it that it just goes in, because he feels like he's going to hit it, and he thinks, if I don't hit it first time, I've got another one in my hand to hit it with anyway. So it's just that, I think it's just confidence, and that's literally it. That he's just like, well, this is going now, and I feel like everything I throw is just going to go where I want it to.
Just before we move on to the final, just touching on the semi-finals, final word sort of on Peter Wright. As I said, not a bad night from Peter, coming in with potentially a bit of an injury still on the back. Defeat to Darry Anderson 6-3 in that semi-final, but generally not been a bad start to the one title that Peter Wright's adamant he's going to get this year. He told us the 2 titles he was winning last year. He hasn't told us he's winning the Premier League, but he's told us if there's one he wants to pick up, it's this one.
Yeah.
How much do you think this injury can hamper his chances, or do you actually think, Tam, that the format of this Premier League probably helps him more than if it was the old style Premier League, 2 points being 1 point, and it's all on the league table?
Yeah, I think from what we saw tonight, it didn't look like it was causing him a massive issue. There was no wincing, there was no looking like he was in pain or looking like he was struggling. He still sort of made a bit of show of getting up on the stage and doing his usual sort of walk on as well. So I think I don't see it unless it gets worse over time as he keeps playing or keeps practicing, and we don't know what he's going to do in terms of sort of the floor events and whether he's going to continue to playing all of those or whether he's going to use that as a bit of a rest for a while. It didn't seem to me like it's going to be a massive issue for him, and it's not something that I'm really concerned about after watching him tonight. I was before tonight, and I think tonight's been a really good night for him. I know he's only won one game, but he looked like he might not be playing this week, and he's come out of it with 2 points. So he's not really lost anything on the field. He's still in a really strong position. So I think he'll be he won't be happy because we know what he's like. He wants to win every single week. But I think he'll be pretty content that tonight's gone fairly well based on how it could have been earlier in the week.
Yeah, and I'll touch upon the league table once we've closed off the final. But then moving on to the final, it was Mentor versus Apprentice. It was Gary Anderson versus Michael Smith. I'm not sure how much longer we can use that, considering the partnership hasn't been there for that long. However, it did. That's where it all started for Bully Boy. And in this one, I've seen a fair few tweets go out tonight since that finals happened, and actually probably during that final, of saying this is the Gary Anderson, this is we all want to see, just going up there throwing it. Even Tam going off the interview, and you've already alluded to that he had on stage afterwards with Emma and Wayne. Around, even Gary said he played well in that final. Not so much in the other ones, but said he played well in that final. Yeah. Average 104. And for me, coming into this final, probably with Bully Boy getting consistently here, I probably edged towards Bully Boy if I was having a prediction at that stage. Not and deny that probably was where I was looking, that I thought this final would be going, that Bully Boy would take it, but Gary Anderson throughout that final, towards the back end of the game, was still averaging around 109, finished on 104. What a performance by the Stogsman.
Yeah, and I think it's just, I don't know what Michael Smith must be thinking at the moment, but it's another final where you're thinking he's got a really good chance here. And when this was the final, I was kind of thinking, I sat here last week and predicted that Michael Smith was going to win it this week. And I thought, I'm going to sit here with me smug for once and actually have got something right, which doesn't happen very often. Certainly hasn't all week at Cheltenham when I've been there either. But I think, I just genuinely thought it's a great opportunity for him. We know how Gary's been playing all the way throughout. And yes, he played well in the semi-final, Gary, but you're still thinking, fancy Michael Smith here to do a job on him and to get this done. And then Gary comes out and he takes the first leg in 10. 4 legs in, he's still averaging 117. And like you say, towards the back end of the game, he's still averaging 109. And it's just another one of those games where Michael Smith turned up to a final and basically just not done a lot wrong and got beat.
Yeah, the one stat that we spoke about in Smith's game against James Wade, that his doubling was top draw of 50%. In this final, Bully Boy still got 4 out of 6. So 66% of his doubling, which is something that you sort of other than Smith, which early on in his career was probably similar to Gary Anderson, and we've talked about Gary Anderson when he's doubling on, it's on, but 46% from Dando. But what he did was that scoring was just too much for Bully Boy, and it's not very often that you can say that when someone's playing Michael Smith to scoring, but the numbers you've just read out are sensational numbers from Dando from the start. And for this one, having that lead, and I'm just going to go back to a comment that we saw from JJ early on around that I'll pop it up on the screen, that said that honestly I think when it was 5-4, if Smith would have made it all level, Smith would have done on and won the game. And for me, that probably stands quite strong. I'm in agreement with JJ on that, and seeing nodding as well, Tam, because Smith, when he was there, we've seen him consistently get to these back ends now of tournaments. It's just getting over the line. But Gary Anderson was just relentless from dart one, sort of all the way through to the end in this one.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? Like, I mean, Smith averaged 99 throughout this match, and it was a consistent 99 as well. He wasn't up and down. He played solid throughout the game, but just was never allowed to be in it because Dando was just at that higher level. And like you say, he got to that end there, and I'm thinking the same. I'm thinking he can still nick this here if he wins this leg. He's got the throw in the final deciding leg as well, and you think he's got a really good chance still of actually nicking this. And then Gando kicked off, what was it, the ton followed by a 177 or whatever it was, or it might be 140, 177. I can't remember exactly what it was, but all of a sudden he's shut the door on him, which he did in both of his kind of previous games as well was that in that final leg of the match, he just closed it out really well. He scored well in that final leg and kind of took it away from the others. And I know against Johnny did get a dart at the ball at the end, but to be honest, he was never really in that leg until that point. And Wright was never in the final leg of it, and Smith got nowhere near really in the final leg of this either.
Yeah, do we in that Tottenham 177 to start it, you just touched upon, was very strong. Put the pressure on early on Bully Boy, set something back. They only come back with a 45 and 60, which then allowed Gary Anderson to come onto it. So just moving on to the league table, and I'm going to I'm going to move on to next week's predictions very shortly. Prepared you for, but just moving on to the league table, we have MVG at top of the lead on 14 points. Johnny Clayton is third on 10 points. In fourth place is Derwin Price, who is on 9 points. Then in fifth place is Michael Smith on 8. Sixth place is Gary Anderson, who edges in front of James. Two lads with James Wade in seventh place, also on 7 points. And bottom of the table is Joe Cullen. The one thing that stands out on that table now is we've had 5 winners, Tam. One question I'm going to fire at you. The 3 we haven't had is Michael Smith, who constantly getting to finals. James Wade, we've seen him in the final, and Joe Cullen in the final. So 3 players yet to win it, but all been in finals. We are only 6 nights in. Do all 8 win a Premier League night?
Oh, that's a good question. I thought you were going to ask me who was going to be the next one to win one, as you were teeing that up then.
No.
With it. I was just preparing an answer in my head, and now it's not relevant whatsoever. Do all 8 win a Premier League night?
And there is a follow-up. If the answer is no, who doesn't? You do know that. So your safest answer is yes here.
I was just thinking that. I'm gonna say no.
Saying to everyone in the chat room, do we think all 8 will pick up a Premier League night? There is only 3 more players who are yet to win one, and we've seen the field with
I don't think we do see it.
How many do we see, and who doesn't, Tam?
I genuinely think that we only get one more out of them that wins one. I think that's Michael Smith. I don't think that Cullen is playing well enough or looks like finding at the moment to win one, which could change in an instant, and he could just turn up and rock up an average 115 next week. But I think it's too much in his head at the moment, and I don't see him getting through it. And the more it goes on, the harder it'll get for him. And I also don't think James Wade's going to win one. And I think he'll be competitive throughout, and he's always going to be in close games, and he's going to nick the odd result here and there. But I don't think we see him put it together for 3 full games on a night either.
So we've started off predictions. We are going to move on to night 7 predictions. But one thing which is next Thursday in Rotterdam, after Rotterdam, we are in the lovely Birmingham for night 8, which hopefully I will be at. But one other thing, just before we move on to that, we touched upon Derwin Price. I'm going to end sort of tonight's discussion around Derwin Price before we move on to previewing that. Derwin Price is currently sitting in 4th place on 9 points. He's 5 points behind MVG, which obviously is only winning one night, but a huge lead difference win. But now Joe Cullen, who is bottom of the league, is only 4 points from him. Smith's only 1, and Dando and James Wade are second. Do you think there is a few things going on his mind around this boxing exhibition? Is it the right thing to do? Could it impact and potentially mean him missing out on Premier League nights? Or do you not think that's a concern for him, and he feels that he can still reach those levels with an injury if that comes up because of what we've seen tonight? That probably gives him a bit more confidence that it's the right decision.
Yeah, I think he's pretty clear in his own mind that he can kind of do what he wants, and he's still going to be able to perform and still do what he needs to. I think the bigger concern after what we've seen, well, not bigger concern, but maybe a concern for him at the moment might be the fact that that boxing match is due to go ahead end of April, is it? Something like that.
It's in April, yeah. I can't remember what night it's
Yeah, I
between.
can't remember when in April, but it's at some point in April that's due to go ahead. If his hand is as bad as it appears to be and looks to be, he's not going to be fighting in the middle of April anyway. It's not going to happen. So it might be the perfect time for him to just put that off and put it off until later on in the summer after the Premier League's finished and maybe sort of try and fit it in them, but then obviously falling into different tournaments so that it falls around. I think he does think that he can kind of do it and it's not going to be an issue for him. I don't agree with it. I think it's stupid for him to be taking it on at this stage, but because of the risk of it and like you say, the injury risk of it, which we've all got our own opinions as to what we think caused the hand injury at the moment anyway. Whether it so what that was, but I just think the smart thing to do would be not do it. And because if you miss another week, like you say, it's getting tight around the edge of the qualifying spots now. You miss a week and a couple of people get a couple of wins and you're suddenly down to 6th or 7th or 8th. You're struggling.
Just looking at when that fight is, it is on the 8th of April, so it's only a few weeks away. It's in between being at the First Director Arena in Leeds and then the week after is in Manchester. And those 2 games either side of that, so the night before the fight, it takes on James Wade. The week after, it takes on world number 1 Peter Wright. So the timing of that doesn't be anymore. And especially a couple of players there who are going to be fighting in and around that 4th spot. So something certainly for the Welshman to consider.
I mean, that's 2 weeks away. If his hand's as bad as it is that he was struggling to throw a dart properly, there's no way he can be throwing a punch in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to next week, and as part of that, we will be predicting the all Welsh affair. So night 7 is in Rotterdam, and we start off with world number 1 taking on world number 5. I always have to look where James Wade is in the world. It seems to be changing week on week with him bouncing up and down, but he is world number 5 currently. It's Peter Wright versus James Wade. We'll do quarterfinal predictions, and then I will let your winner, Cam. And in the chat room, if you all want to get involved, let's see your predictions for quarterfinals and who you think will win night 7 in Rotterdam. So starting off with Peter Wright and James Wade, Cam. Who you edging towards? Will we see Wade that demolished a bit like we saw tonight, even with a very good performance, or do you think he can turn it around and then snakebite?
I don't think we'll see him get demolished. Like I said, that came as a little bit of a shock in the, especially because of how he played, that he ended up on that sort of receiving end tonight. I think we will see him play well again, and I actually think he might nick this. I've just changed my mind mid-sentence there, which is why I sound like I've got no idea what I'm saying, because I was going with Peter Wright and I've just changed my mind. I actually think James Wade nicks this 6-5.
I think scoreline, you're not far off. If anyone was to say anything else other than 10 or 11 leads, I'd be very surprised. But I'm just siding towards Peter Wright, just because we've seen a bit of inconsistencies from Wade. We've seen a very good performance this week. However, it wasn't the way of a win, which normally means we'll probably see Wade win next week, averaging 85. However, I think it'll be Peter Wright will be the one who'll get over the line. And in game number 2, we'll see night 6 winner Darry Anderson come up, and then one of the 3 players still looking to that night win under their belt, which is Joe Cullen. Are you going with the Scotsman in this one, or is it the Rockstar for you, Cam?
No, I think the Scotsman for me here. I think Gary's got a bit of freedom now that he's just got 6 points tonight. He's now no longer in a scrap at the bottom for whether he's still involved in this. He's now back in there. So I think he's going to be really up for it next week. And I think it'll be another night where we might see Joe struggle a little bit because he just can't quite get that rhythm and that consistency, rather than sort of like when he fires in a 180, we saw it so many times tonight as well in just the game that he played, that he's following it up with 43 or 38, or it's just not the consistency that's going to be enough. And I think Gary will just play with a little bit more freedom next week, and I think probably 6-4.
It's hard not to side with Darry when you see the Anderson of what we've saw tonight. do think he follows it up as well. I don't want to say I have question marks around Joe Cullen. Actually, I do, because I said it on Monday about Darry Anderson. He went on and won it. So I am going to say I've got question marks around Joe Cullen, but I do fancy Darry Anderson just to set up that all-Scottish semi-final. Talking about One Nation meeting with two players in Rotterdam, we have Johnny Clayton come up against Derwin Price. We've mentioned sort of the concerns of Johnny Clayton, just with a form dip into the levels we saw last year, which were ridiculous in 2021 from the Ferrets. But Derwin Price, potentially in training throughout the week for the fight, who knows, sort of in that sort of position we'll see from Desi Price. But do we think it'll be the Ferret or the Iceman who comes through, Tam?
I fancy Gezi in this one. I think that Rotterdam's probably not going to be the night where Johnny turns the form around. I think it's one of those arenas where it'll be absolutely buzzing. It's the game before they see MVG as well, so everyone's going to be up for it. It's going to be loud in there. It's going to be rocking, and I think that will play into Gezi wanting to put the show on and really sort of turning up. And I think we'll see that from him, as long as obviously he's all right and fit enough to play properly. I think we'll see him play well in this and not give Johnny the chance to kind of nick the result he needs. So 6-3 to Gezi.
I was thinking just the same. That is what come into my head. But the dream with someone on this channel never seems to work well. But I am going to stick with Desi. I'm going to stick with my original thought and go with 6-3 for Price to get the better of Clayton. Then this one massively intrigues me. For me, the quarterfinal of the night on paper, with that MVG returning to Rotterdam for a Premier League night. We've got Michael Smith, who at the moment just doesn't lose in quarterfinals or semi-finals. If he's turning up, he's always reaching that final, it seems to be, with Bully Boy. Something's got to give here. Will we see MVG get over the line in Rotterdam in this quarterfinal, or will it be Bully Boy, Tam?
This one I'm really on the fence with. I don't know which way I think this is going to go. MVG is obviously going to want to put on a show in Rotterdam in front of the Dutch crowd. He's going to be fired up for it. He's going to want it. But Michael Smith's going to want revenge for last week as well, in the losing out in the final to him. And we know how well he is sort of playing at the moment, and he keeps making finals. And it's about whether I'm not sure. Does the crowd affect MVG positively or negatively, in that he's going to want to put on a show? I think positively, and I think we see MVG win 6-4. I think that crowd behind him is going to be big for him. He's going to be pumped up, and I think it'll work for him.
He's in. He couldn't resist today. He couldn't resist. Derby's in the house. Average night saved by the final. Bloody expensive beer too. That's what happens when you live in Nottingham, Dob.
I know. He's nearly as bad as Brad, isn't he? He's just everything's how much, and he's just a very tight man. He should have come to Cheltenham yesterday. It was £7 a pint at Cheltenham yesterday.
Prices are ridiculous. He must be made of money. My prediction in that one is I see MVG getting over the line and setting up a semi-final with Desi Price. Tam, I'm going to come to you for our final prediction. I'm just going to give you a short moment to have a think about that. We do have a clip from tonight's winner, so I'll play that first, and then I will come to you for your final prediction. So first of all, let's hear from tonight's winner, which is Darry Anderson.
These boys, to be honest, these lads should be battling me 6-0 every night. Every week they should be doing me 6-1, 6-0. You know, my regime on a dartboard now compared to what it was years ago, it's not the same. So, yeah, a bit of luck tonight.
Michael Smith said he doesn't believe a word of it when you say you don't practice.
I'll swear. If I had my dad's ashes sitting here, I'll swear right in front of you. And everyone that says it, you know what I'll tell them? Can do one. Because that is the God's honest truth. Comes out my mouth. My missus will tell you, the boys at the lakes will tell you. Anyone that doesn't believe you, do one. That's it. That's the only way I can say it. Because it does pee me off. I do not practice. Ryan comes once every blue moon. Ask him. Have you asked him?
I haven't seen him, but we will do it.
If you ever ask him, I've not seen Ryan for donkeys now since we've practiced. When we do, we'll have a few legs, and I'll spend most of the night sitting on my ass.
That's fair enough.
So that's what I do quite well. So, but I don't. I mean, they all say I don't believe. My kids, missus, my mum, my dad's ashes, I will swear on the lot, hands down in front of you. And anyone who comes up to my house and says different, then we're going to have a bit of a problem, because I'm telling you the truth. I don't lie. I don't bend the truth. I'm telling you now, I don't do it.
Oh, I love Darry Anderson. He's great.
I do as well. I love him so much.
That was a short clip from Darry Anderson's interview with our very own Mr. Bars after tonight's final. You will shortly find the full interview on our YouTube channel. But for a guy who doesn't practice to pick up a Premier League night and perform like that, free flowing in that final for me, Dob sort of mentioned it there. Wouldn't go as far as to say saving the night. However, it was a very, very good final performance from Darry Anderson. And as we move on then to our final prediction on night 7, the winner and runner-up, Tam, I gave you a little time to think about it. I don't even think Dobbs this nice normally, but I gave you a little time to think about it. Who is your winner and who does he beat in the final in Rotterdam?
The toughest bit of this is always remembering what I've just predicted on the quarterfinals. So I think we see James Wade gets through Gary as well and gets to the final and plays MVG in the final, and MVG wins in Rotterdam.
I'm going to go Snakebite to win, beating Darry Anderson in the first semi-final, and MVG getting past Derwin Price to see Snakebite beat MVG. But I am in agreement with you that Michael van Derwin will reach the final in Rotterdam. What is going to be a fantastic night and one I'm looking forward to. As I said, quarterfinals there very much intrigued me. I think all 4 of those can go either way. We've seen with Sunday that is not always the case. Just a prediction we've just had in. Wade will win in Rotterdam and Dob will smile for 2 hours on Monday's Live Lounge. I've got a feeling if Wade is to win in Rotterdam, it will be 2 hours plus added on time because Dob won't stop smiling. However, I want Wade to win if it means Dob's not going to be moaning for a lot of time on Monday. He can't tune. He's tuning in, but he can't do anything about it. So
he'll still find something to moan about.
I can say what I want. So that is night 6 Fallout Bar all done. Thank you very much, as always, for BoyleSports for their continued support. Thank you to Mr. Bars, who has brought us the interview from Darry Anderson. And more importantly, thank you, Tam, for joining us. The regular on Fallout Bar always seems to be a never fail. Apart from when you go into Ireland to watch it, but we'll let you off for that week.
Yeah, that night I will not be available. If you try to get me on that night, it's going to be completely incoherent, which most of what comes out of my mouth is anyway.
But thank you as always, Tam, and thank you everyone who is tuned in to Fallout Bar. We will be on stream across the weekend, keeping you up to date with the Pro Tours, and of course we'll be back with a Live Lounge on Monday evening. So thank you all as always, and good night.